Hello again and welcome to another 140k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to Sean Mosbergen for sending in some awesome pictures of his Cadian 501st. Absolutely love these pictures. I've always maintained that a well done classic Cadian colour scheme just looks really good, and I have to say these guys do look really nice, Sean, so thank you for sending those pictures. I really like the vibrant green that you've managed to get on some of the Cadian body armor, some of the boots, and I also really like how well done you've done that tank camouflage on that Lieben Rusted March. It just looks absolutely fantastic, and it's quite interesting having that mixture of sort of solid olive sort of green vehicles like the Sentinels and the Chimeras, and then having the infantry with a bit of camouflage and the tanks with a camouflage. I think it just works really well. So thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page, or you can do what Sean did and you can email them directly to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com. But without further ado, let's crack on with today's video. Now in today's video I want to do a quick tip tactica on the Mortar Pit or Mortar Platoon Tactic. Now some of you may be saying, what is the Mortar Pit? What is the Mortar Platoon Tactic, Mordian Glory? Stop speaking in riddles and just tell us, goddammit you. Well, that's what I'm going to do, because only heretics speak in riddles. The Mortar Platoon, the Mortar Pit Tactic is a sort of general idea that has come about from the recent balance patch, which allows one officer to be able to order loads of squads. And what you do is you take 3 squads of mortars, 3 squads of heavy weapon teams with mortars. It gets you 9 mortars in total, and you take a single platoon commander and you pop them all around each other. You basically take the 9 mortars, you put them all together in a big block, and you put a single platoon commander with them. And as long as the mortar squads are within 6 inches of each other, he can do one order to take aim, and it affects all of the mortar teams, which is really fantastic. One order, ordering 3 squads, ordering 9 mortars, really points efficient. And it means that for 175 points, you can get 9 accurate mortars. And this can be used for any regiment, just to say, this is a good tactic for any regiment, but it is especially effective when we go old school and we apply it to Cadians. Now you might be thinking, Cadians? Mortars? Surely this is, what year is it? Are we playing 8th edition again? Well, we kind of are playing 8th edition again. That's the crazy thing. Because these Cadian mortars, for those that don't know, Cadians, when they stay still, innately get to reroll 1s, and if you give them the order to take aim, they get to reroll all hits. So I'm sure you guys can suddenly see where this is all going, which is you have 1 platoon commander surrounded by 3 squads of mortars, that's 9 mortars. He does 1 take aim order, and suddenly all of those mortars, all 9 mortars, if they stayed still, which they should do because they're mortars, right, will be re-rolling all hits, which is really good. And like I said, this is not a necessarily new tactic. It's something that we've been able to do since like 8th edition. But what is effective about it is that we can now do it for cheaper. Okay, now we're not talking 8th edition, points. Obviously, we're not going to talk about 8th edition anymore. We're in 9th edition now. But in terms of previously, if you wanted to be able to do this, you'd have to put a company commander with those mortars, and then you'd only be able to order 2 of them. Or you'd have to do a company commander, then spend a CP for Inspired Tactics 2 or 3. Previously, it just wasn't quite as points efficient. Whereas now, it is points efficient. You take your 1 platoon commander, he can just order all of those mortar squads. And if you happen to have any other squads that are within 6 inches that have stayed still, he can order them as well. So it's really effective. Or is it? You see, on paper, this tactic looks really good. And in certain matchups, it is very effective. However, the meta has shifted. 9th edition is a different beast to that which we have faced previously. And it's not... If you're going to take the Mortar Pit and expect it to be blasting foes off the table left, right and centre, then you might be severely disappointed. Because 9th edition, as I've said, we're not in 8th anymore. We're in 9th. And that means that there's some things we have to take into account. Firstly, which is the lethality of the game, the power level of the edition that we're playing in now is is just so way above me. Games Workshop's done something to correct the shit, but we're still the Titanic heading towards an iceberg if they don't sort this balance out sooner or later. Like, it is difficult. Okay, and whereas, 3 or 4 years ago, having some full re-rolling mortars was making the internet lose their shit, right now, it's kind of a quaint idea. It's good, don't get me wrong, and in certain matchups it'll be bloody lethal. But if it's only good in certain matchups, does that make it a viable take-all-comers tactic? Well, this is the thing. And 100, we're not talking about getting squads of mortars for 33 points anymore. We're talking about squads of mortars that got 50 points. Platoon commanders aren't 15 points, they're 20. It's all more expensive. This tactic, is about 50% more expensive than it really, it would have been traditionally. Okay, now, what I mean by, where's the game changed? What's the meta of 9th edition? What am I talking about? Well, essentially, guys, we are in an edition of pretty much elite stuff. There are some exceptions to the rule, but by and large, most of the enemies that you're going to face out there are going to be tough, way tougher than what a mortar can deal with. At the end of the day, a mortar is D6 bolter shots. Is anyone in the game losing their shit over D6 bolter shots? Over bolter shots in general? No. Grey Knights get storm bolters strapped to every bozo that they can muster, and no one really cares about them. And that might be sounding like, oh, that's a bit of an arrogant thing to say, Mordian Glory. I've always, Grey Knight bolters are really, really good. Well, as someone who has been on the receiving end of them a lot of the time, they're okay, Grey Knight bolters, don't get me wrong, but that's not where the main power of the army is coming from, is it? The main power of the army is coming from, like, Dread Knights and stuff, isn't it? Which pack a lot more than a bloody bolter. Alright? So the point, and let me tell you, slight tangent, it was really weird facing Grey Knights at the last few events and getting armor saves against bolt-like weaponry, because most of the time you don't get an armor save being tactical doctrines, it being Primaris bolters and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, regular bolters, I don't fear them. Okay, and so the fact that guard get like this kind of thing that can shoot bolt rounds indirect, it's not ideal. The last one that I went to, and to be fair, it was a fun event, but that almost worked perfectly because it allowed me to play a variety of opponents and not just the same meta crap over and over again. But when I did face meta crap, for example, when I faced Grey Knights, and the first game when I faced Custodes, I didn't do anything with my mortars, and they fired turn after turn after turn, and basically 9 mortars killed at best, killed like a Grey Knight and wounded one, or chipped a wound off a Custode. Okay? And you might be like, well, of course that's not the ideal target for mortars. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, guys, sounds really accusatory, this video. Mordian Glory fans are coming at me. No, what I'm saying, guys, change tone of the video. What I'm saying, guys, is that the meta favours a lot of elite stuff. The meta favours hard to kill stuff, because at the end of the day, we've been riding this edition of Squig Buggies and AdMech, and I know those have gone the wayside, but they're still around. Their legacy is still around, I should say. And Dark Eldar, we've got this legacy of just things just have so much damage output, so you need to be so tough. You need to weather the storm, and so a lot of people are turning up to events with Grey Knight Nemesis Dread Knight spam. That's one of the biggest things that's rocking the meta at the moment. And you've also got Thousand Sun players who are seriously now, we're starting to see this happen, guys, and this will start creeping in. You're going to start seeing 30 Scarab Cult Terminators, 20, a minimum of 10 every Thousand Suns list, go up to 30. That's how good they are, okay? Because their bolters are good, and you can recover up to 3 Scarab Cults a turn. That's 120 points a turn you can just recover as long as the squad isn't wiped out. Okay, so like that is the level of durability, and even those armies which you would say are traditionally, because I know someone right now is thinking in the comment section, Mordian Glory, what about Dark Eldar? All their bozos are like toughness 3. We can get them, and it's like, okay, Dark Eldar, you'd think more to spec well into them, but sadly the cadence supplement has just come slightly too late. And this tactic has come slightly too late to really capitalise on that. You see, Dark Eldar a couple of months ago were all about dem witches and dem raiders, right? That was their jam. And so you could imagine if you could blow the raiders open and mortar the witches inside, those witches have only got 6 up save. No, you know, that's not going to save them against mortar rounds. And actually, at the last event that I went to, one of the matches I went into was against Dark Eldar, and we absolutely crushed them. It was a team game, and we absolutely crushed them because we blew open the raider with the blood brides, and then we blew up the blood brides and mortars. But you're not going to face that, not really, in the proper meta, in the proper tournament scene, because witches have gone up in points, and so now the route that people go down with the Dark Eldar is either Kabbalite spam. And your Kabbalites have got, they might be times 3, but they've got a 4+ save. And so if they're in cover, which on a proper board, everything's in cover. If it's not in cover, it's dead. That means you're on a 3+ save. So whilst you might be able to wound them a little bit, they're still going to be tricky to damage. And realistically, actually, where Dark Eldar are kind of going now is down the Talos route. Okay, so even if you're getting your mortars against that Kabbalite spam, you're still more than likely, you're still going to be struggling because chipping away 3+ saves it can be hard. But even then, that's only like 50% of the time you're going to be facing Dark Eldar. Most of the time they're going to be running Talos, Grotesque, all that good shit, all that really durable stuff, which mortars just aren't really ideal going into. I mean, you try mortaring a Talos to death, you're going to be there all game. And not in a good way, as in you outlast them, as in no, it's not going to work. So that's one thing. So like I said, so a lot of the meta is not geared up for, it's not bringing units that are good for the mortar to go into. However, having said that, I did have a number of games where the mortars were really effective, and one thing to mention right now, and we don't know how long this will last, but right now, mortars, right now Tyranids are on the rise, aren't they? With like Leviathan and Hive Guard and whatnot. Now, I don't know if mortars are going to outdo Hive Guard. I suspect not. I suspect that if the Hive Guard get the drop, they're going to blow those mortars away. But one thing I can say is a really good counter to Hive Guard is any form of indirect fire. If you can win, if you can get turn 1 and win that indirect firefight, you're going to be having a really good time. And well, mortars certainly going to help do that, and you can do things like they've only got a 4+ save at the end of the day, Hive Guard, so you can do things like +1 to hit, +1 to wound them. Then you can do overlapping fields of fire. Your mortars might be able to do something for you there. At the very least, they might be able to support what you should be taking, which is full pellet manticles, which are a real hard counter to Hive Guard. So my point is that there are some things, but that's not a great. But if you're going in against Hive Guard, those kind of lists, what you tend to find is they also bring Gene Stealers. Also tend to bring a few blobs of Gene Stealers, and mortars are fantastic going into Gene Stealers because they tend to be running squads of over 10. Why do they take more than 10? Because they want to get an extra attack per Gene Stealer. So that means you're getting maximum shots on your mortar pits, at least for the first volley. So against some meta, against some armies like that, which are currently, their stars in ascendancy, you'll find your mortar pit does really, really well. So my point is this: that my summary of thinking is this, which is the mortar pit is in some matchups really, really good, and in some matchups really not effective. That means that it's not necessarily a take-all-comers thing. I feel personally that it is stronger on paper than it is in real life, and I think really it's difficult to say. I would definitely say outside of Cadian, I wouldn't. It's okay, but it does perform at its best in Cadian, in the Cadian trait. And even then, when I've run it in the Cadian trait, I've run it for 5 games. Even then, it was only really, really effective 50% of the time. Now, that means if you go into a game and your Moors aren't going to be doing as much, you're going to have to start getting creative with them. Maybe they can form some impromptu move squads or something like that. But at the end of the day, they are relatively cheap. They are a relatively good source of indirect fire. But they are not. Whilst it may look like on paper they're fantastic, I would say I would rein that enthusiasm in a little bit. They're okay, they're okay. They're all right, but you know they're not game winning. They're just extra chip damage essentially. That's what mortars are. That's what they've always have been. But that's my experience on it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If I had to give it out, you know, like a score out of 5, I'd give it like a 3. Like, you know, it's all right. If I had to say, is it worth taking? I'd say, yeah. I mean, it's decent. But you know, don't like build your whole army around it. One thing I would say is that if you're going pure infantry, and I mean pure, I'm not talking manticores or anything, then it's essential. And that's the one, because at the end of the day, you need indirect fire these days. And it's your only source of it, so you might as well take the best form of it, right? So there we go. That's my thoughts on the Cadian Mortar Pit, on the Mortar Pit in general. I think it's a decent tactic. I think that you will do okay in 50% of your, you know, overall with it. I think in 50% of your games it'll be fantastic. I think in 50% of your games it won't be fantastic. But I think overall there are much worse tactics that you can come up with, and there are much worse options you can put in your list. So if you like mortars and you want to get the most out of them, then I say go for it. But just temper your expectations somewhat. Okay? Some games they'll feel great. Some games not so much. Depends on your local meta. That's the biggie, right? That's the last thing I'm going to sign off on. Depends on your local meta. If you know your meta is power armor for days, this might not be for you. If you know your meta is not power armor for days, this might be exactly what you're looking for. One last thing, very last thing to mention. Some of you may be saying add mechs, Skitarii, blobs, because some of you may still be seeing that in your meta. Just be aware that veteran Skitarii cohorts from their regimental renown do not suffer from the blast. They can't. The blast keyword has no effect on them. So that's just one thing to be aware of, which means you wouldn't get maximal shots into a lot of Skitarii units, and that's the way that people tend to run them. So just one thing to mention. I know that these Skitarii admech is still twitching. The codex is still fine. It's just, you know, we're not seeing it as, you know, people seem to have switched over to like Grey Knights, but yeah, just one thing, last thing to mention. Anyway, I promise you guys, that's it. The only thing I'd mention at the end, and it's not an only, it's a big deal. I want to say massive thank you to the Patreon supporters. I've mentioned the tournament a few times in this video. It's thanks to my Patreon supporters that I am able to go to tournaments. I'm able to try out tactics on the cutting edge and bring them back to you, and not just base it on paper, but base it on real life experience, real hard battlefield data, and that's how I can bring this stuff back and give you guys informed tactics, not just theory hammer tactics. So that's a massive thank you to the Patreon supporters. They are what allow me to do that. And if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there's a link down in the description below. But without further ado, we'll wrap this video up here. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.